Well, the natural law, they say, is that, first of all, the primary function of sex in marriage is to beget children. Do you disagree with that?
I disagree with it 100%.
Your feeling is what, then?
My feeling is love and the attraction between men and women. In many cases, the very finest relationship has nothing to do with bearing a child. It's secondary. Many times we know that. You see your birth rate, you talk to people who have very happy marriages and they're not having babies every year. Yes, I think that's a celibate attitude. Surely.
A celibate attitude, but you agree that Catholicism, according to the tenets of Catholicism, they rule that birth control violates not only the Church's position, it isn't the Church's position, but they say that it violates a natural law, as I have just explained. Therefore, birth control is a sin, no matter who practices it. Now, the violation of the natural law, according, you certainly can take no issue with the natural law as the hierarchy of the Catholic Church regards it.
Well, I certainly do take issue with it. And I think it's untrue, and I think it's unnatural.
Well, let me ask you...
Everything bears it out that it's an unnatural attitude to take. And how do they know? I mean, after all, they're celibates. They don't know love. They don't know marriage. They know nothing about bringing up children or any of the marriage problems of life. And yet they speak to people as if they were God.
Let me ask you this question. Suppose a healthy, a well-to-do couple decide for some reason never to have children, use birth control all their lives. Would you say that your methods are being misused, Mrs. Sanger?
Now, if they were intelligent people and they had some reason for thinking of children as a responsibility, or some disease that they might have that they wouldn't like to pass on to a child. And I think it would be a very unselfish attitude to take if there is a disease.
No, I say a healthy, well-to-do couple. A couple that just doesn't want children, and for that reason they use birth control all the way. Well, do you think that that is a misuse of your methods?
I don't think it's a misuse. I think if they're intelligent adults, but they must know what they want. They must manage their lives themselves. And certainly if there's nothing in birth control, then there isn't other things that you might deny yourself.
I've asked you your motives a little while ago at the beginning of the program, your motives in working for birth control as hard as you have for as many years as you have. You reject the principal Catholic argument against birth control as being totally invalid. What do you think is the reason, the motive of the Church in forbidding birth control?
You'd have to ask a Catholic that. I couldn't say what their motive is.
Well, you couldn't say officially what their motive is, but you certainly must have an opinion about it, Mrs. Sanger.
Well, I don't have much to do with the hierarchy. And I know that the people that come to our organization and want to have the same methods, or whatever it is that one can have to prevent a pregnancy, that those women will say to us, we ask their religion very often, and they say, I am a Catholic, I was raised in the Catholic Church, my church is wrong on this. This is the one thing. I will never be anything else, but my church is wrong on this one thing. And that is said over and over and over again. So what the motive is.
But you won't hazard a guess.
I don't care to. Thank you.
Welcome back to Breakdown Friday. You asked for it, we're giving it to you again. Part 2 of our breakdown of Margaret Sanger lying in public, basically. And she's being interviewed and asked about her position on birth control and why she supports it so much, and her opposition to the Catholic Church's position on sex and marriage, her position on sex and marriage, and Margaret Sanger, positioning herself as a person who is for the health of women. In the last video, she said that she was a born philanthropist. So she's posing herself as one who is fighting for women's rights as far as women's health right, birth control, being able to give women options. But when we're able to look at Margaret Sanger's impact on not just America, but the Black community, we can see that her philanthropic outlook, or her philanthropic guise, was just used to cover up her eugenics, because she did believe in eugenics. And she was one of the leading eugenicists during her time, one of the most popular eugenicists during her time. So we're getting into it because it's interesting. Last video, we already knew, but it's just more evidence in the bank of how Margaret Sanger's ideas have helped to shape a lot of the ideas that modern women are spewing today, especially Black women not understanding the root of the ideologies that they are espousing. And that's what we're here to do, uncover these things so our community can have a better understanding of the things that we follow, the things that we say, the things that we believe in, the things that we align ourselves to, because we know Black people love the liberals and love these liberal stances. And we're not saying that you should run straight to the conservatives, but what we are saying is these stances, these ideas, and these ideologies from these left, this far left, has really damaged the Black community. We're not saying go right, we're saying go Black. So just pick this thing back up, man. Pat, you heard what Margaret was talking about. You know what we were talking about last week, so let's build forward. So as far as Margaret's latest comments that we just heard her talk about in her opposition to the Catholic Church, her ideas on family, marriage, and all these things, I mean, why do you think Margaret Sanger has been able to infiltrate? Her ideas have just been able to catch on so greatly within our community without any, because it's not like people really don't know about Margaret Sanger. We know we have generations who don't know, but there are. What about those that know about Margaret Sanger but still roll with it anyway?
I think what you have here, and she just kind of reiterated this point of quite a few times, and what she just said the first few minutes was the fact that she wants to divorce actions from consequences.
That sounds familiar. PC.
She just pretty much, that whole little first segment there was her doubling down on that concept. Like the fact that she would say like bearing a child is secondary.
Mm-hmm.
Secondary. Like that in and of itself is diabolical. Like that is just nasty work. To say that bearing a child is not a primary purpose for sexual engagements. To say that it's not a primary purpose. So she's essentially saying building a family is not a primary purpose of human pairings. And I'm not saying you got to agree with it or disagree with the fact that, you know, we should pair up and build families. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that the denial of the biological imperative of it is sinister. Like that is just, that's some nasty stuff. You know, and then not wanting to talk about motives while talking about motives, you know, her presentation in terms of the snarkiness and the all of these other things that go into how she's delivering her message, you know, and let's highlight the fact that she is talking about celibacy as if there's something wrong with it. That's a celibate attitude.
Yes, from those celibates.
What's wrong with not having sex when you're not in a position to procreate? Like there's nothing wrong. I would say, to me, that sounds responsible and intelligent. You know what I'm saying? And I understand, like, I don't have a problem with people being in relationships and wanting to use birth control because they want to enjoy each other. And yeah, we have those options. But when you start questioning the natural purpose of things, now you slipped into something that's no longer a moral argument. Now I have to begin, this is no longer a values argument or a beliefs argument. Now you're questioning, you're trying to challenge some of the fundamental building blocks of human behavior on a natural level. And so when we start getting there, now I have to start questioning what else is going on in your brain, like the level of delusion, the level of that whole little sequence was just very interesting for me. To hear. And I'm still, because you know I don't watch them, so I'm going in cold. But that was a lot. Like I could probably do a whole lessons from the screen episode just on that little 2-minute stretch you just played, because that was dense. with a lot of stuff that we could spend an hour or two unpacking, I'm sure.
Like, where's the sound bite? You do know we can see you lying. Like, it would be perfect right there. But it's like we need to understand the motive and the intent behind the messaging so we can better understand why the fallout of the messaging happened and why it was so horrendous to us. Remember, with us being and I'm gonna use my air quotes, the minority group or the second, third, fourth class of groups of race of people that's in America. Once again, understanding numbers, understanding democratic voting processes, understanding why population is important, understanding why unity is important. Margaret Sanger her influence is responsible for a lot of the fallout in the Black community. You know, I'm listening to videos today, and we still have Black men and Black women out here really believing that we hate each other. And this is the stuff that she's spewing is the genesis of this stuff. PC, man, let's jump on in, man. What do you think about the crap that Margaret Sanger just spewed for the past 2 minutes?
Jesus Christ.
Listen, man. First of all, I'm sorry, I'm doing something, messing with my camera. First of all, let me say something, man. This chick look like she's straight out of a horror film. Can you imagine just being in an Airbnb and there's just random people in there, and she one of the people that you gotta stay? I couldn't get no sleep with her in the house. Walk past the kitchen, she's slicing lettuce with a big ass knife.
Breathing hard.
Yeah, you know what I'm saying? She looked like she straight out of a horror flick in the 70s. You know, Vincent Price was her husband. It'd be all types of, this is a wicked woman. And when I think about it, it's like so godless. When you think about like the way she's talking, and so it just strikes me as this is like straight out of the book of Aleister Crowley. You know, do as thou wilt be the whole of the law. It's like all the things that it is literally like, this is like Sodom and Gomorrah, what she's describing. And like Pat said, good point. Let's have all the fun. And I've had talks with people who think just like her within the last few years. Have all the fun, be as promiscuous as you want, and deal with none of the consequences that come with it. It was like she even struggled with the fact of a family that was practicing safe sex. You know, like damn it, we got these things out here that y'all can use. So listening to her break this down, it speaks to how do you have a marriage without a family and pride, and not the purpose of getting married is about building family. Forget the fact, okay, let's say you're not in love. Okay. There used to be a time when you had nomads who roamed the world. Okay. It's understandable why you wouldn't have a family during those times, because you always were moving. So you didn't have time. But there's this thing about society where people were called settlers, where they were settling into one place. And then if you're settling into one place, you're no longer hunters and gatherers. Yep. So you become part of a community. And part of the community is the fact that you're going to need somebody to replace the labor that provides food, shelter, and protection. Those somebodies usually were the children. That's why you used to have families, 8, 9, 10 siblings, because the children were the ones who worked the fields. The children were the ones who went hunting. The children were the one that did the gathering of the vegetables and the fruit. And the children were the ones you pass down a tradition to for the next generation. I think that when you have thinking like this is the total damnation of society. Because if you're not reproducing, what happens is your society will die. Your society will fall off if you're not reproducing. And I think that this line of thinking goes to like the concept behind books like A Brave New World, right? Just talking about that earlier today with somebody. This notion of depopulation, and we talked about it before. Part of the eugenic society one of the things they're talking about is eliminating, eliminating groups of people who they consider to be undesirables.
Yep.
We talked about that last show.
Yep.
And the majority of the population they consider to be undesirable. Black people just happen to be at the top of the list. You know what I mean? But they plan on they don't mind collateral damage happening in their backyard.
Yep.
The way they function and operate. They move and operate. And I say they because Margaret Singer is part of a bigger cabal of people. She just happened to be the face, the spokesperson to carry up the message. But like I talked about before, she had people funding her. Whether it was the Carnegie Mellon Group or the Carnegie Group, and whether it was the Rockefeller Foundation, like we talked about before. I just feel it's cliche to say the Rockefeller Foundation because they're behind a lot of stuff. But there were other groups. J.P. Morgan was part of the Eugenics Society, if I'm not mistaken. And he represented the Rothschild family. So when you think about that, and there are other people that represent the Rothschild family now that are currently around, George Soros. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to say that out loud. But when you talk about how they move cloak and dagger, it's an Orwellian doublespeak going on. So they're talking, she's sitting here with a straight face, and you can see her contempt. I don't think she like men. She's definitely blasphemous against the Catholic Church. I think she probably has, the way she's talking in rebellion of God. I'm not a Catholic, but it doesn't take a lot to see that she has contempt for the concept that she has to be submissive to a higher power. And in that she's going to do everything that's blasphemous to what is written and understood by a multitude of religions, spiritual groups, and so forth. And in terms of obedience and how to function, and then in society, families, forget the religious aspect if you want for a second. When you had marriage, it was a merger of two families.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the bridge was supposed to be under God or however, your higher power is, but it was supposed to be a merger of two families. That product was supposed to be promised so that those two families will build and grow from the union of those two families. You can't do that if you're choosing not to have children. And I said last time, this is a very dangerous way, because now the irresponsible part, you tell women that they don't have to have children. And then when women get that biological urge for which she seems to be aboard to, don't understand, especially as women get close to their what is that period when they menopause, women have, it's like this is biological urge to have children. Strong biological urge to have children. A lot of women start trying to have children in their mid-30s and early 40s because of that biological urge. And that's the most dangerous time for them to try to do it, because you put them in a position for which they're going to deal with a whole bunch of natural complications, because you have the ovarian walls hardening up, and there's more difficult. They don't have many eggs left, and there's even conversations about the deterioration of the eggs that are still there, because women are born, girls genetically are born with their eggs. And so you turn into a misogynist when you say, hey, you're doing something dangerous that could harm your body. Don't tell me what you do. You're damn misogynist. You know what I'm saying? But what she's talking about has led to a mortality rate. And first it was white families, but then within the black community as well. Over the last 20 years, they just really started talking about it 10 years ago. I remember getting into debates with white supremacists about things that had nothing to do with birth rates. So I was talking about how they would come at black people for riots and things of that nature that took place due to us being harmed or deleted, by white vigilante violence, police brutality, and so forth. And they would start pulling out data from Eastern Europe talking about the mortality rate. and I'm like, what does this have to do? And they would basically say, we're dying out here. We're not going to live. We're not going to survive. And it was like they just wanted to be able to vent that to me about the mortality rate. But this is one of the places that it comes from.
Yep.
This concept of eugenics, but like I said before, eugenics started off in France in the 1800s.
Against their own people.
Yes. It started off.
Yeah.
And I get some of it because, you did have a lot of incest in Europe. That's not something that's uniquely that's not known. And you did have what they considered to be imbeciles, from the constant generational sharing of genes and bloodlines. You had this thing with them where they wanted to keep the money in the family. So you had cousins getting married with each other. So from the royal bloodlines all the way down to the ones that were sleeping with the animals in the barns, they were practicing incest. It was part of the culture. And so that's where a lot of the concepts of, Francis Galton was looking around saying, this is weird. But they had to find a way to make black people the foot of it, because at that time Europe was still engaged, and they still are to this day, engaged in a global war of domination with those of African descent.